Hello, we're here with Trevor Schaefer. He's with TREVOR'S.org, and I am so excited to introduce this really inspirational person to you guys today who is fighting childhood cancer. Trevor, I would love for you to tell the community here in Florida your story about your fight with childhood cancer and how you got into the work that you're getting into.
Absolutely, Stell. Thank you for having me. Excited to be with you, and hope everyone is safe and healthy in a COVID era and a hurricane and flooding era. But very happy to be with you, and happy to share my story and help however I can.
Okay, do you want me to go through the slides first, or maybe we could just talk about a little bit about your cancer? Because I know that a lot of people in our communities are facing cancer, and it's a big part of what we've done with Fight for Zero with crowdsourcing medical information is getting everybody's information and telling our stories and working together to input it into a map, for a visual. It really helps when we go to Tallahassee and we show them, like, listen, this is unusual. And I think, you're doing something very, very similar with a new project with childhood cancer. And I really like that you're zoned in on childhood cancer. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we could run the slideshow, I kind of have a little bit of history on there. And then just moving forward and how I got started and what's going on now, and how we moved into this. I'm a brain cancer survivor, and a co-founder and executive director of Trevor's Trek Foundation. And I'll explain more about the foundation in a minute. Just go to the next slide. So a little bit of history about me, background. I was raised in a small town on a glacial lake about 100 miles north of Boise, Idaho. I was diagnosed with medulloblastoma brain cancer in November of 2002 at the age of 13. I had an 8-hour brain surgery followed by 14 months of radiation and chemotherapy treatments. You can go to the next slide. And then, so a little bit background about how Trevor's Trek got started. During my treatments, post-hospitalization or post-surgery hospitalization, and during my treatments and blood transfusions, my mother spent a lot of time with me in the hospital. She slept there a lot, most nights. And with that, being in that setting, she was alarmed by the number of children that were battling cancer. And this is something she was not aware of and would not have been aware of outside of the hospital. So she started, when I was going through my treatment, she started to do some research on trying to find out why so many children were getting cancer. And naturally, she started in our hometown. And she soon discovered that the year I was diagnosed with brain cancer, there was a total of 5 brain cancers in a population of 1,700 people. So that just fueled her a little bit further to go to state and local health departments and try to get answers, try to get help into why, what was going on. Was there something in the environment that was causing this spike in cancer? But she didn't receive any help. She was turned away, not taken seriously, told that our town was too small to warrant a cancer cluster study. So these things led to the founding of Trevor's Trek Foundation in 2009. And originally, we created the foundation for childhood cancer awareness. We can go to the next slide. Some things that we did early on with the foundation to create more childhood cancer awareness is we built a children's cancer pavilion in a local park in Boise, Idaho, Julie Davis Park. That rendering here is on the right. And then we also work to introduce and promote Trevor's Law, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. Next slide. So what is Trevor's Law? Trevor's Law is legislation that addresses cancer clusters throughout the United States. It was introduced in 2009 by former Senator Barbara Boxer from California and co-sponsored by Senator Mike Crapo from here in Idaho. And that was really important because we had that bipartisanship, which was very rare even back then in 2009, but even more so now with an increasingly divided political climate. To have bipartisanship was very important. And so more about what Trevor's Law really does and seeks to accomplish. It will enable federal agencies, the CDC, Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, to coordinate with state and local governments, institutes of higher education, and the community in investigating and addressing cancer clusters. In March 29th, 2011, I testified along with Aaron Brockovich at a hearing in the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee on behalf of Trevor's Law. Go to the next slide. And then, so for the next 5 years from that hearing, we just worked with senators and lawmakers in D.C. We flew back and forth to Washington to try to get more support for Trevor's Law and get it passed. Even with that bipartisanship originally, it was a very difficult task to do. And it seemed as if Trevor's Law was not going to go anywhere. But then in 2015, I got a call saying that they wanted to attach Trevor's Law to the Frank R. Lautenberg Chemical Safety for the 21st Century Act, or TSCA reform. And Trevor's Law was going to be Section 21 of that legislation. And so that was in 2015. And then just going through the process, in 2016, President Obama signed the TSCA reform bill and Trevor's Law into law. Go to the next slide. So after the Trevor's Law was signed into law, not a lot happened. As you know, not long after the bill was signed by President Obama in June of 2016, and then President Obama left office just a couple months after that, and not a lot had happened with Trevor's Law. Then in 2018, there was $1 million that was allocated to restructure the cancer cluster guidelines in accordance with Trevor's Law. So the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention began working on that, and they had opened up a notice for public comment to get more opinions and comments on that process. Okay, next slide. And then now Trevor's Law today in 2020. I received an email about a month and a half ago from the National Director of the CDC, giving me an update of where things were at with Trevor's Law. And so their plans were to hold focus group discussions with state, territorial, local, and tribal health departments. Those departments would ultimately be carrying out Trevor's Law and implementing it in each individual state. And then after they do that, the CDC had planned to hold focus groups and discussions with key stakeholders outside of the government. And they had planned to do this originally, hold the focus group discussions with the stakeholders. They had planned to do that this summer, but because of COVID, that has been pushed back to a later date. They're going to keep me updated, and they want to coordinate those meetings with us, but it's unclear right now as to when that's going to be. They're going to reach back out to me and let me know. My guess is it will be sometime next year. Once we see how our handling of COVID plays out, and how we're able to address it and fight it in the next coming months. But hopefully it'll be the first half of next year. We can start that discussion. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I had mentioned before that we founded Trevor's Trek Foundation for childhood cancer awareness. We have slightly shifted our focus due to our frustration from the lack of implementation and action on the government's part to implement Trevor's Law. And so we have now shifted to create awareness for childhood cancer clusters that exist in this country, and then also support the implementation of Trevor's Law so we can ensure that it gets implemented and that communities who need assistance from Trevor's Law get it. And so a big part of that is making sure that state and local governments reach out to the federal government to require assistance from Trevor's Law. But we need to make sure that they do that and that they do reach out. Again, right now, because the CDC has not finished restructuring their cancer cluster guidelines in accordance with the law, we have to get that step done first. And so you can go to the next slide. And so this is a program that we've started with the foundation to capitalize on our new mission to create awareness for childhood cancer clusters, but also to get Trevor's Law implemented. And it's called the Childhood Cancer Cluster Buster Program. And what we're doing is we are collecting data on childhood cancer cases throughout the country. And then we are mapping those cases to provide tangible evidence that we can use when talking to state, local, and federal governments to show them that there is a need and what communities are experiencing high rates of childhood cancer and what communities need assistance from Trevor's Law. So we can use this information to essentially monitor the federal government and state governments to ensure that they are following the law and that communities are getting the help that they deserve. Okay, you can go to the slide. Yeah, so that's really it. That's what we're doing. And the best thing to do right now, and that we're focused on again, is just collecting more childhood cancer cases. So we can map those and we can pinpoint and identify more childhood cancer clusters throughout the United States. And when the CDC is able to get back on track, get the cancer cluster guidelines updated, and work with us on that, we can be ready to go to the federal government and communities that need help in different states. And we can use the data we have collected and the mapping that we are doing to show those states and those communities that they need assistance. And we will ensure, we're here to ensure that happens and to provide that information to them. So that's update on Trevor's Law and what we're doing now, and the best way to help and help us collect more childhood cancer cases and show more clusters so we can get Trevor's Law implemented.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm seeing if there's any questions. If you guys are on the live stream right now, I really would like, if you have any questions, make sure you put it in the comments so that way we can get them answered. So we've done some extensive crowdsourcing here in Florida. So this is similar to that, to where you would go to the website, and I can put that up here so you guys can go there and report the childhood cancers. Are there local clusters in Brevard? We have a high number. Is there local? So we did have a Brevard cancer assessment that showed higher than normal cases of certain cancers, but we didn't have a specific study on childhood cancers. So how do we get Trevor's Law? I mean, I know that we've looked into it in the past and when we did our crowdsourcing, and I guess it would be, you said something about the CDC, they would have to be finished with what they're doing in order for us to implement it, correct?
Yeah, so I think that's a big piece of this is we have to get the CDC to finish their restructuring in accordance with the law. to be ready to answer these inquiries from. It'll have to come from the state and local governments reaching out to the federal government saying, hey, we have an issue here and we need help for the language of Trevor's Law. But I don't think that can happen until the CDC gets done with their restructuring of their guidelines.
Okay.
And I know that in Florida, Congressman Brian Mast is a supporter of Trevor's Law, and he wants to see it implemented as well. I've done talked with some local media there as well, and some different individuals. So as soon as those guidelines are updated, the proper avenue, and this is where we can help as well, is to get in touch with local and state representatives to have them reach out to the federal government and request assistance under the language of Trevor's Law.
Okay, so the beachside communities need to reach out. Is there a suggested way for them to do that? So somebody's asking if the community should be reaching out and talking about Trevor's Law with their local governments.
Yes, at this point, that's the best thing you can do, because we need to put as much pressure as we can on the federal government to make sure that they get the cancer cluster guidelines updated as efficiently and effectively as possible in the least amount of time that they can. I mean, this cannot delay. It's been 4 years since Trevor's Law was signed into law, and they're just now finishing the updates of those cancer cluster guidelines, and that is a timeline that is not acceptable. As everyone you all know, cancer. I mean, cancer's not going to wait. Look at how many children have been diagnosed; their lives have been changed forever if they're fortunate enough to survive within those 4 years. It's just unacceptable. So we definitely need to put as much pressure as we can on the federal government to get this implemented. And if there is a change in November, then that will accelerate the implementation of Trevor's Law as well, because I have been working with Vice President Biden's campaign for some time now, and one of his priorities if and when he takes office is to get Trevor's Law implemented.
Well, that's really, really neat and good to hear. So one of the things outside of them putting pressure on the local governments would be definitely going to the website and reporting any childhood cancer within our communities here in Florida, so that way it can be put into your database and used for a really great cause. I know one of the things that people worry about is their data. So is there, how do you keep the data safe? And, you're using it for the mapping. Is there anything else you're using it for? Things like that?
No, the mapping is all we're using it for, and it's not a lot of data. It's pretty cut and dry as far as what we collect, the information we collect. I mean, even if it's basically just type of cancer, year of diagnosis, age of diagnosis, and where they are diagnosed. And if you want to put your name in there and have your name or the name of the child displayed, you can do that. If not, you can check the box saying you prefer not to have that information shared publicly, and we will not share that information, and that is kept internally, and that will not be included in the mapping. So really, it's just to show childhood cancer cases throughout the country, and so we can and then we can use that information too, because like I said, we are working with the CDC to get these guidelines updated and implemented, and we can use this information to show them and tell them where these clusters are and what communities need help, so we can ensure that the proper contacts are being made in those states to work with them to get Trevor's Law implemented there.
Wow. Okay, that's really great to know. And I think, giving an idea of what information you're taking really helps too. We just got a comment that said, I lost my son at age 11 in Merritt Island. I'm so sorry for your loss. And we have another comment. It says, Trevor is a Superman. Thank you.
Oh, that's so nice.
So, but I mean, you're just doing some incredible work, Trevor. I am, so honored to have you on here, and I'm thankful that you came to our community to explain what Trevor's Law was, and so we can encourage and motivate everyone to go to your website and to report childhood cancer cases within our community. And we know that we have quite a bit because we've already done extensive crowdsourcing, and I think, and that's why it was so important to bring you on here and explain exactly what it was, and so that our communities could understand the work that you're doing and the project that you're working on. And I'm really hoping that things do get pushed through with the CDC so we can start using these resources. There's a lot of communities across the country that are dealing with similar issues as our community is here locally. And I know that there's a couple other communities in Florida that are also dealing with cancer issues. I know south of us, we have brain cancer clusters, glioblastoma. And on the West Coast, we've had other issues. And in South Florida, I know that there was a biostatistician, I don't know if you knew this, Dr. Smith, who did a study, and he found 2 clusters in South Florida. So even if you're not from our area in Brevard County, we are live on our Facebook like page, and you may be from South Florida or West Florida or Northwest Florida or Northeast Florida, and we do have directors across the state. And we encourage you to go ahead and go on the website and report your information as well. I think it's important that we all give that information so we can have a better visual of what is happening in our state. Would Trevor be a resource to talk to local governments if we could get them interested, or how do we best promote Trevor's Law locally?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is talk to your local and state representatives, to tell them that to make sure that they know that we have this law here that addresses cancer clusters, and that we need to get it implemented, in your community. Before Trevor's Law was passed, there was no mechanism in place, or not a very good mechanism to address cancer clusters or childhood cancer clusters. Now there is, and now we need to ensure that our governments are implementing it and enforcing it. And we're here to help with that. So we can reach out, and that's why this information and data we're collecting and mapping is so important, because we can use that to go to states across the country, Florida, everywhere where there's a childhood cancer cluster, and we can reach out to those local representatives. We can reach out to the local community members who want to be involved, and we can make sure that the local governments know that there's a problem and that we need the support of Trevor's Law in that area. And we can prove to them that happens. And we're here to make sure that they don't just brush it under the rug and your concerns fall on deaf ears. We're here to make sure that they actually get Trevor's Law implemented, that they actually reach out to the federal government to request assistance. And like I said, we worked with several different individuals and state representatives, like Brian Mass, who wants to see it implemented and wants assistance from it, that we can contact and we can reach out to, and we can tell them, hey, there's a problem in this community, and they need help from Trevor's Law, and we will make sure that they follow through with it.
So we have another question. Do you collect data as far back as the 80s, so a picture is painted of the rise in childhood cancer diagnoses over time?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good point. That's one important factor to collecting information and data so far back is like you stated, Jennifer, is that you can see the rise in childhood cancer over time, but also we have never, as a country, never addressed really pollution sources going back even before the 80s. So nothing really has been cleaned up, at least not addressed the way it should be since then. So the chances that the pollution sources that could be contributing to cases back in the 80s are still there and still leaching and contributing to cases today. So yeah, it's very important to collect data even as farther back than the 80s.
I know Jennifer Jackson. She's a cancer survivor herself from, an original 90s cluster that happened locally here that was actually investigated back in the 90s. So I think that was an excellent question and a point. Because when we were doing our collecting, I know that the health department and certain government entities will only go so far back. They have very strict guidelines. They won't go past certain zip codes or municipal lines. And we always say, cancer knows no municipal lines or any zip code, or, we're all say it was from water, for instance, which is what we believe happened here. Water serves more than one neighborhood. It serves several neighborhoods. So, having this data, again, I know in our area here, being able to just visually show that map of everybody's self-reported cases and in certain areas, it was a pivotal moment in helping us discover that there was a dump, underneath South Patrick Shores, where they had they were digging up mortars and just all kinds of different military debris. So it really helps in different cases give us answers. That visual, if you see like a major hotspot like we were seeing in South Patrick Shores, plus we had the historical documentation and things like that, it's such an important job to go through and see all of the information and putting it together. It's like a puzzle piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is. And, and even if the federal government, and that's another reason we're doing this data collection, is we're preparing that we want to be ready that even if we do get pushback from the federal government, or they do not do what they're supposed to do, which I've had plenty of experience with. That's why we're preparing for that. If that doesn't happen, we're going to make sure as a foundation that Trevor's Law gets implemented, and we'll implement it ourselves if we have to, and we'll help these communities ourselves. So either way, this is going to get implemented. And I work with Erin Brockovich on a fairly regular basis on contamination issues and different issues, and she's doing some mapping of her own with different contamination sources and different chemicals and things like that. And so we definitely have the resources that we're prepared to do whatever we can to either help or get Trevor's Law implemented.
So here's another good question that I didn't even think of. Do you accept data from people who report a child neighbor or a schoolmate they knew who passed away, then the family moved out of area? For instance, we have a lot of military families that move around a lot, and we have military families that live in our community, and they end up moving around a lot. So is there any gray areas as far as can people report for other people, or I know it's childhood cancer, so you would expect like a parent to report for them. So is there any anything to do with that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's options on our form when you fill it out, which is very short, but are you reporting for yourself or someone else? And then more questions drop down based on your answer to that. So, that works in several capacities. Like you said, Stell, is most of the time it would be a parent reporting for a child, but if the child is grown, like me, but was diagnosed, or Jennifer, but was diagnosed when they were a child or a teenager, then they would be reporting for themselves. So we see both. So yeah, that, and we also collect like the how long the child lived in the area before they were diagnosed. I think that's an important factor. But that's another hole that we have experienced with the state and local health departments, is that, well, this child of cancer case wasn't reported or collected here, even though the child lived here, because they were diagnosed in another state, or they had treatment in another city. So yeah, that's very important, and that's another reason that doing this kind of research and investigation on a grassroots level is so important, because um, I don't want to say that you sometimes can't trust the government, but sometimes you can't. And sometimes numbers are skewed to their benefit or to their liking. And so doing this work, working with NGOs and on a grassroots level is very important. And that's a great example of it.
We got another person that said, I know 4 cases in early 2000s in Merritt Island and 3 have passed. And see, that's why it's so important to report. So make sure that you're sharing this video, getting the word out, let your neighbors know that, Trevor is collecting childhood cancers. Let them know about Trevor's Law. This is why we're putting this up here, because we want the community to learn more about this incredible resource that Trevor has created through his organization. And so, you've had a lot of great feedback on here, and I'm sure if there's any more questions, we can go ahead and just email them to you, and I can help answer them, and come back to anybody that has any additional questions. I think what you are doing is just so incredible. And the fact that you fought cancer at such a young age and you decided, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to make a difference. And I kind of want to end it out just asking you, like, what would your vision be for a future? Like, what's your vision for the future?
Well, I mean, certainly the first thing would be, and my mother shares this vision with me, is no child to be diagnosed with cancer. But we know that's not realistic. But we do believe that there's a lot of maybe different factors that can be contributing. From a small amount is genetic, maybe a genetic disposition, or diet or health, but a large portion of it is the environment, and that's something that we can change, and we should change. And I believe that we have the duty to, as Americans. I believe the government, they're there to protect us, and so we can clean up our environment. We didn't know a lot of pollution that happened back in the 50s and 60s. Maybe we didn't know then what it was going to do or what it was going to cause, but we know now. So it's our duty to clean it up. And that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're going to fight for. There's a lot of it to be done, but we can do it.
You hit it on the nail. Thank you so much. And so we will be back. We're going to try to do some weekly lives like this with various people. Thank you again so much, Trevor. And, thank you for coming and talking to our community here in Florida. I hope that everybody will share this and continue reporting. Everybody always asks us, what can we do? What can we do? And this is one really easy step that you can take, is going to a website and simply filling out a form. It's the little steps like that make a tremendous impact, and you can be a part of that impact today by going to his website. I'll put it up one more time, and then we'll get going. Here is his website. So make sure you go to the website and report right there on the website. The form is on the website. So again, thank you, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stel. And we're here to answer any questions anyone has. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime.